She didn't know it yet. But the next 93 days would test every limit of her body and mind. Jessica Buchanan was traveling through northern Somalia when armed men surrounded her vehicle, rifles raised, shouting commands. Dragged into the desert, miles from help, she realized one thing. No one was coming. Not yet. But that wasn't the strangest part. Jessica had been in northern Somalia for months, moving from village to village, teaching safety, first aid, and basic landmine awareness. She wasn't a soldier. She wasn't armed. She was just trying to keep people alive in a place where danger grew out of the sand. On the morning of October 25th, she felt something different. The road was too quiet. The driver avoided eye contact. And the radio, normally buzzing with chatter, was completely silent. Then she saw them. Figures on the horizon. Rushing forward. Rifles raised. Before she could react, a man slammed the butt of his AK-47 against the window. The glass fractured like ice. Jessica's heart dropped. They were surrounded. And she instantly knew. This wasn't a robbery. This was an abduction. What she didn't know was how far these men were willing to go. The gunman pulled her from the vehicle, shouting commands she didn't understand. Her interpreter tried to explain, but a rifle strike to the ribs silenced him. Hands tied. Head covered. Feet forced forward into the sand. Every step felt like a countdown. They marched her for hours. No food, no water, just the blistering desert sun cooking her through layers of cloth. She stumbled. Fell twice. Each time a man yanked her back to her feet. When they finally stopped, she could barely breathe. The bag was ripped from her head. She blinked at the light. And saw where she was. A crude desert camp. Gunmen. Tents made from tarps. No walls. No gates. Just endless sand and armed men watching her like prey. Jessica tried to speak, her voice trembling, but one of the kidnappers waved his rifle inches from her face. She learned the rules instantly: no talking. No crying. No standing without permission. And definitely no hope. But that wasn't the strangest part. Night fell like a hammer. The desert turned cold, the kind of cold that cuts straight through bone. Jessica curled into herself, shivering on the bare ground while the kidnappers laughed around a fire. She listened. Every word. Every tone. They weren't amateurs, they were organized. Shift rotations. Guard assignments. Scouts posted on the dunes. This wasn't random. This was a business. And she was their product. One guard, barely older than 20, approached her. He lowered his voice and whispered, "Your government will pay. Or you will die here." Jessica stared at him. He wasn't threatening her. He was warning her. That night, she couldn't sleep. Not because she was afraid, but because she had finally understood the scale of her nightmare. These men weren't desperate. They weren't temporary. They weren't guessing. They had done this before. And they were good at it. But what they didn't know was that someone else was already watching them. Thousands of kilometers away, in a dimly lit operations room, analysts reviewed new satellite images of northern Somalia. At first, it looked like nothing, just more sand, more dunes, more emptiness. Then one of them noticed it. A vehicle track that wasn't there the day before. Leading into nowhere. Ending at a small cluster of heat signatures. They zoomed in. 4 men. 1 woman. Jessica. Her exact location was impossible to confirm, but it was enough to trigger the first stage of planning. Pentagon officials gathered. Intelligence officers briefed. Commanders began sketching possible rescue scenarios on digital maps. But there was a problem. Every day that passed made Jessica weaker. And every day that passed made her captors more unpredictable. The question wasn't if they should act. It was when. And the answer depended on something no one could predict. Back in the desert, Jessica tried to survive the only way she could, by staying invisible. She didn't argue. Didn't resist. Didn't show fear. She listened. She memorized voices. Footsteps. Guard routines. Where they hid their rifles at night. Which men were violent. And which were nervous. Knowledge became her weapon. But her body was losing the fight. Every night, fever hit harder. Every morning, the sun knifed through her skin like a blade. On day 20, she collapsed. The kidnappers argued, some wanted to move her, others wanted to abandon her. One man suggested selling her to another group. It didn't matter. Jessica understood something devastating: if the Americans didn't come soon, she wouldn't survive long enough to be rescued. And that wasn't the strangest part. Jessica's health spiraled. Her joints ached. Her skin cracked under the sun. Her weight dropped fast, too fast. But the real danger wasn't dehydration or starvation. It was infection. Somewhere during a forced march, she had cut her leg. A small wound. Barely noticeable at first. But after days in the dirt, the wound turned red. Then purple. Then swollen. By day 30, she could barely stand. Her kidnappers didn't care. They needed her alive only long enough to get paid. If she died before negotiations ended, she was worthless. The guards became impatient, angrier, louder, more unpredictable. Sudanese, Somali, Yemeni, different accents, different agendas. They argued about money constantly. One night, Jessica overheard one of them say, "She's not worth the effort. She won't last." That was the first moment she truly felt herself slipping away. But it was also the moment when, far away, a decision was finally made. At a U.S. base in East Africa, the briefing room felt electric. SEAL Team 6 operators leaned forward as the intelligence officer repeated the same line twice: "Her condition is deteriorating. If we wait, she dies." No one argued. No one hesitated. Within minutes, the rescue was greenlit. A high-risk infiltration. At night. Into hostile territory. With zero margin for error. They rehearsed every possible scenario: approach on foot, thermal imaging, silent entry, neutralization of guards, extraction under fire. 1,000 things could go wrong. Only one needed to go right. The team commander closed the briefing with a single sentence: "We're not leaving without her." And that wasn't the strangest part. Back in the desert, Jessica could sense something changing. Her captors were moving faster. Relocating more often. Sleeping less. She heard whispers: government pressure, American drones, militias closing in. Fear spread through the camp like smoke. On one particularly tense night, a guard jolted awake at every sound. A twig snapping. A distant echo. Even the wind. Jessica realized something: they were scared too. As dawn approached, the kidnappers shoved her to her feet and forced a march across jagged rocks. She stumbled. They dragged her. Her legs barely responded. Hours later, they reached a new camp, smaller, more exposed, with fewer places to hide. They didn't bother building shelters. They didn't bother resting. They were preparing for something. But they had no idea what was coming. Night. January 25, 2012. The moon was barely a sliver above the dunes. The kidnappers huddled around a small fire, arguing in low tones, unaware of the shadows moving miles above them. A C-17 transport aircraft drifted silently through the night sky, invisible from the ground. Inside, SEAL Team 6 operators checked weapons, tightened harnesses, and waited for the green signal. Thermal goggles on. Rifles secured. Heartbeats steady. When the light turned green, they jumped. High altitude. Free fall. Absolute silence. Black shapes slicing through the night, descending toward the desert like a storm no one could see. Jessica slept only a few hundred meters away, unaware that the most dangerous and most important minutes of her life were about to begin. And that wasn't the strangest part. After landing miles from the camp, the SEALs regrouped in a tight formation. Sand whipped across their faces as they began their approach. They moved low, fast, perfectly synchronized. Every few steps, they froze, scanning the terrain. Every silhouette. Every ripple of heat. Every shadow. This wasn't improvisation. This was choreography. They reached a ridgeline overlooking the camp. Through night vision scopes, the SEALs counted the guards: 9, 10, 11, 12. Some asleep. Some restless. All armed. The commander whispered into comms, "Targets confirmed. Stand by." Then, something unexpected happened. One of the guards stood up and began walking directly toward their position. Jessica's rescue was moments from collapsing before it even began. The guard wandered closer, muttering to himself, rifle swinging lazily from his hand. Maybe he was checking the perimeter. Maybe he needed to relieve himself. Either way, he was 10 steps from discovering the world's most elite special forces team. The SEALs went still. Not a breath. Not a twitch. 30 seconds stretched into a lifetime. Finally, the guard turned away. Took 4 slow steps. And headed back toward the fire. The team commander let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. Execute. What happened next took less than a minute. The SEALs fanned out around the camp. Their movements were silent predators in the sand. When the first suppressed shot cracked the air, Jessica was jolted awake. Jessica didn't understand what she was hearing at first. A thud. A muffled pop. Shouting. Feet scrambling. Then another pop. Gunfire. Real gunfire. She tried to sit up but collapsed. Her legs were too weak, her body too cold. Panic surged through her chest. Was this a rival militia? Another kidnapping? Execution? Then a voice. Not angry. Not threatening. American. Jessica. Jessica, we're U.S. Navy SEALs. We're here to get you out. She froze. Had she hallucinated it? Was this another trick? But before she could question it, 2 dark silhouettes rushed toward her. One knelt beside her, checking her pulse, her breathing, her temperature. You're safe now. We've got you. For the first time in 93 days. She believed it. The gunfire intensified behind them. Short bursts. Controlled. Precise. The The SEALs were eliminating guards as they converged on Jessica's position. One operator lifted her into his arms as another covered their retreat with a suppressed rifle. 2 o'clock, movement. Copy. Neutralized. The team moved in a diamond formation, protecting Jessica at the center. Every angle covered. Every threat anticipated. Jessica tried to speak, but the words came out broken, trembling. Am I really? Yes, the operator said, tightening his grip. You're going home. As they cleared the final dune, explosions of sound echoed behind them, the last guards making a desperate stand. It didn't matter. The SEALs were already gone. Extraction wasn't over. They still had to move Jessica across the desert to a secure landing zone miles away. The operator carrying her shifted her weight over his shoulder in a fireman's carry and began running across uneven sand. Jessica could feel his heartbeat. Steady. Controlled. Focused. Behind them, the team fanned out in a staggered line, rifles aimed in all directions. Every few seconds, clear left. Clear right. Movement north, negative. They were ghosts. Efficient. Deadly. Unstoppable. But then a distant engine roared to life. The kidnappers weren't all dead. A truck was coming. Headlights flared on the horizon, bouncing violently across the dunes. Armed men in the back shouted orders, raising rifles, aiming into the darkness. The SEALs dropped to one knee in unison. Contact vehicle. One click out. Approaching fast. The commander's voice was ice-cold, engage. 2 operators dropped their rucksacks, unstrapped suppressed rifles, and opened fire in controlled bursts. Muzzle flashes flickered like lightning. The truck swerved. Tires shredded. Metal sparked across the sand. The engine coughed. Sputtered. Died. The truck skidded sideways and tipped, rolling twice before settling in a cloud of dust. Silence. Then the commander spoke, move. Now. Jessica closed her eyes, overwhelmed. This wasn't a movie. This wasn't a story. This was real. And it was far from over. As the sun's first glow crept across the dunes, the SEALs reached the extraction point, an open patch of desert marked only by coordinates and timing. 2 minutes to pick up, someone whispered into comms. Jessica was laid gently on a thermal blanket. One operator wrapped her in a jacket, another checked her pulse again. You're doing great. Stay with us. She couldn't stop crying, not from fear, but from the shock of safety. Then, in the distance, the low, thunderous chop of rotor blades. A helicopter. Coming fast. The team stood, weapons raised, forming a perimeter around her. Whatever happened next, they were ready. The helicopter descended in a storm of sand. Jessica shielded her eyes as the SEALs moved with perfect coordination, 6 covering the perimeter, 2 lifting her, 1 assisting with boarding. A crewman pulled her inside. You're safe now. We've got medics waiting. Jessica grasped his arm, trembling. Thank you, she whispered. He shook his head. Don't thank us. You survived 93 days out there. We're just the ride home. The helicopter surged upward, leaving the desert behind. Through the open door, Jessica saw the shrinking landscape, the dunes, the ruins of the camp, the shadows of the men who had held her. She didn't look away. Not this time. Inside the aircraft, medics immediately went to work. 4 needle. Antibiotics. Warm blankets. Vitals checked. Blood pressure low, too low. Hydration critical. Jessica drifted in and out of consciousness, hearing fragments of conversation around her. She's stable. Infection's serious but manageable. She needs hospital care ASAP. Every time she opened her eyes, she saw the same thing: calm faces, focused hands. People fighting for her, not to hurt her, but to save her. She had forgotten what that felt like. Hours later, Jessica woke in a military medical facility. Clean sheets, soft lighting, the smell of sterilized equipment. A nurse smiled down at her. "You're safe. You're in Djibouti." Jessica tried to sit up, but the nurse gently pressed her shoulder. "Slowly. You've been through a lot." Then the door opened. The commander of the SEAL team stepped inside. For a moment, neither said a word. Then Jessica whispered, voice breaking, "You saved my life." He shook his head. "You kept yourself alive long enough for us to get there. That takes more strength than you realize." She cried, not from fear, not from pain, but from finally feeling free. Jessica spent the next days recovering, gaining strength, eating real food, drinking clean water, finally sleeping without fear. Doctors told her she survived because of her resilience. Soldiers told her she survived because of timing. Her family told her she survived because of hope. But Jessica knew the truth: she survived because she refused to give up, even when everything around her said she should. And when the world seemed darkest, when she thought no one was coming, a team of strangers risked everything to bring her home. This wasn't just a rescue. It was a promise: no matter how far you fall, no matter how lost you feel, someone, somewhere, is still searching. And sometimes, they find you.